Hi, I'm Thibault, and along with Katia, Jacques, and Samuel, I'm here today to talk about one of the hottest names in science fiction right now, Christopher Nolan. Nolan is a British director, producer, and screenwriter, and he stands out in today's Hollywood by his ability to bridge the boundary between art films and Hollywood blockbusters. His most famous films, including The Prestige, The Dark Knight trilogy, and Dunkirk, are both intellectually ambitious works, experimental works, and fast-paced, thrilling crowd pleasers. Today, we're going to take a closer look at the three Christopher Nolan films which belong to the genre of science fiction: Inception, Interstellar, and Tenet. These three movies have in common a strange, but not altogether absurd, take on the laws of physics, as well as a strong emphasis of the manipulation of time. We're going to try to answer the question: what part do science and the scientific understanding of time play in these three films by Christopher Nolan? Welcome to The Science of Nolan's Fictions.
Inception is a science fiction film that plays with the concept of manipulating dreams. Cobb and Arthur are the two protagonists that use technology to infiltrate their target's subconscious in order to extract information and steal or manipulate them. This might seem completely dissociated from reality, since dreams are often considered as an object of philosophy more than science. But recent advances in neuroscience have proven that manipulation of dreams could be possible. Scientists from Berkeley University were able to modify a memory in mouses' heads. They also could reconstruct the images seen by a patient in an RMI. This shows that Inception is based on possible future technologies. Apart from this, Nolan sets rules in the films. Some objects permit to make the difference between dreams and reality, which is something not possible for us, and this is a topic well known in philosophy since Descartes. The technology that enable Cobb and Arthur to use the dreams of others is based on drugs, chemistry, and the rules are quite clear. One needs, for example, a signal to wake up, and this signal is, in the film, Edith Piaf's song.
Disturbance, sedation. For sleep, stable enough to create 3 layers of dreaming, we'll have to combine it with an extremely powerful sedative.
Nolan explores the dream within a dream, and as he is used to, he wants the spectator to be active, to live the same experience as Cobb here. At the end of the film, we hear Edith Piaf's song during the credits. This means that the spectator should feel like he's in a dream and like we tell him to wake up. Moreover, Nolan plays a lot with the scientific method. From the beginning, we see this quite known spinning top, and we want to understand what is going on. So we look for hints, and hints are given, but they only disrupt us because they don't give any information. For example, when Cobb finds a piece of paper, and this piece of paper is blank. Another very central point on a lot of Nolan's films is time. And time is here quite interesting too, because depending on the dream you're on, time is going to move slower or faster. It might also draw a parallel with relativity.
Brain function.
In other words, it gives us more time on each level.
Brain function in the dream will be about 20 times normal. When you enter a dream within that dream, the effect is compounded. It's 3 dreams, that's 10 hours
I'm
times
sorry,
20.
maths was never my strong subject. How much time is that?
It's a week, the first level down. 6 months, the second level down, and the third level.
It's 10 years. Who would want to be stuck in a dream for 10 years?
Also, it is quite useful to have a spectator that is active. That means that here, Cobb has lived a trauma. He has lost his wife, and so his conception of time isn't quite objective, and the spectator feels a bit lost in the explanation of the film. Finally, we see that science has a place in this film, even though we might think that a film that deals with dreams and that enables, for example, architecture to work with a complete different art is a complete fiction. It's not true, because the author hints on the scientific methods for the spectator to try and understand this film.
After meddling with our dreams in Inception, Nolan has decided to explore black holes and space-time next. Interstellar is one of the latest films directed by Nolan. It premiered in 2014 and starred Matthew McConaughey as Cooper, a retired NASA pilot that is tasked to explore exoplanets in order to save humanity from extinction due to climate change. For this movie, Nolan has partnered with physicist Kip Thorne on the limitations and the unforeseen possibilities of Einstein's general relativity. As stated by Thorne himself in his book The Science of Interstellar, the point of the film is to show the enormous power of science and technology to save humanity from disaster. So, let us look at some key scenes from Interstellar and reveal some insights on the underlying physics. 1. The wormhole.
Oh, you say it, don't spread it, huh? It's a sphere. Well, of course it is. What you thought it would just be a hole. No, it's just that all the illustrations I've ever seen.
In order to travel interstellar distances in a reasonable amount of time, that is, a few months, the crew has to go through a wormhole. The idea of a wormhole is something that is actually theoretically possible, but unlike black holes, they have never been observed. This part is therefore pure speculation, but not scientifically impossible.
I'm not thinking anybody until we get out of here in one piece, Ron.
Indeed, in our most recent theories, the bottleneck of the wormhole is a singularity, meaning that it is infinitely thin. Therefore, if the laws of general relativity still hold at such extreme conditions, the astronauts would be crushed at the middle of the passage. The movie resolved this by stating that such a wormhole has been put there by 5-dimensional beings that are not subjected to the same laws as us, and can thus shape the wormhole as they wish. 2. The black hole.
The literal heart of darkness. We could just see the collapsed star inside. The singularity. Yeah, we'd solve gravity. We can't get anything from it.
Nothing escapes that horizon. Not even light. Oh, the answer's there. Just no way to see it.
There's Miller's planet.
In the movie, one of the habitable planets is located near a supermassive black hole. The imagery of the black hole in this scene is very close to what an actual black hole would look like. According to Thorne, the scientific committee of the movie had to numerically solve Einstein's equation for a black hole. We can, however, try to intuitively understand how such a picture was created. Without any relativity involved, the black hole would look like this. The actual body of the black hole at the center and an accretion disk will contain gases and space dust quickly orbiting the black hole, just like Saturn. However, Einstein tells us that for massive bodies, light is bent around them, akin to a lens that would change the trajectory of light by focusing it on a single spot. This effect of gravitational lensing implies that the light that is emitted by the accretion disk behind the black hole, which we would not normally see according to classical physics, can be bent in such a way that it can go around the black hole. The same goes for the light that is emitted at the bottom, and all of this results in a beautiful scenery for the movie. However, in order to keep the epicness of the black hole, Nolan has purposefully neglected some other aspects of the laws of physics. The actual simulations also take into account the Doppler effect and aberration. Granted, it looks a little less sexy than Nolan's depiction. 3. Time dilation.
Thumbs up, as has Dr. Mann's. Edmonds went down 3 years ago.
Transmitter failure?
Maybe. He was sending the thumbs up right until it went dark.
But Miller still looks good, though, right? Because she's coming up fast.
Mm-hmm.
With one complication. The planet is much closer to Gargantua than we thought.
Gargantua. It's what we're calling them, the black hole. Miller's and Dr. Mann's planets both orbit it.
The fact that time moves slower when one is closer to heavy objects is a signature aspect of general relativity. However, the numbers used by Nolan in the film are not quite accurate. In order to have a time dilation factor of 1 hour equals 7 years, general relativity predicts that Miller's planet should be orbiting at this distance from the center of the black hole. That is, the planet would be touching the event horizon of Gargantua, making Cooper's expedition a one-way ticket to his demise. Nolan's decision of choosing such an extreme time dilation factor is probably to show how humans are inherently mortal and finite in time, as shown in the scene when the crew reunites with a member who has stayed in the base during their trip.
Hello, Ron.
I've waited years.
How many years?
By now it must be.
It's 23 years, 4 months, 8 days.
Doyle?
But I was prepared. I knew the theory. Reality's different.
As a conclusion, Nolan's Interstellar plays brilliantly with the laws of physics to tell a story about humans and their relationship with time and isolation. The movie has resulted in numerous scientific publications and is an example of the symbiotic relationship between science and fiction.
I am going to speak to you about the movie Tenet, which was directed by Christopher Nolan and that came out during the summer of 2020. It was the main and only cinematic success of this year. So the title of the movie is an English word meaning principle or doctrine. It has the particularity of being a palindromic sequence. It is also a word of the Seder square, a magical square containing the Latin palindromic sentence Seder aripo tenet opera rotas, which was found in the ruins of Pompeii. All the words of this square are present in the movie. Seder, by example, is the main antagonist of the movie. Like many of Christopher Nolan's films, Tenet centers on a supposition that comes out of real science. Where Interstellar looked at wormholes and time travel, Tenet questions whether it's possible to invert the entropy of an object or a human to allow it to move backwards through time. In writing Tenet, Nolan took some suggestions from physicist Nobel laureate Kip Thorne, who also advised on Interstellar, but ultimately the filmmaker decided to forgo some elements of reality. So, a word about entropy. Entropy is the measure of the level of order or the level of information of a system. There's a really fundamental law in physics telling us that entropy always increases. On average, things get more and more disorganized. That's why we grow older. Our body gets slowly more and more disorganized. So, I'll let the movie's chief scientist explain it for me in this short scene from the beginning of the movie.
How about now? It's inverted. Its entropy runs backwards, so to our eyes its movement is reversed. We think it's a type of inverse radiation triggered by nuclear fission.
You didn't make it.
We don't know how yet.
So where did it come from?
Someone's manufacturing them in the future. They're streaming back at us. Try it.
The story centers on the protagonist, the man in the previous scene, a CIA operative who is recruited to a mysterious organization called Tenet. He learns that a war is being waged from the future, where technology has been invented that allows objects and people to invert, reversing the flow of their entropy so that they travel backwards in time instead of forwards. Tenet was also created in the future, and its goal is to stop the antagonists from setting off a doomsday weapon that will wipe out both the past and the present. The protagonist is assisted in his mission by Neil, who helps him without us knowing exactly where he comes from. So after having gone himself through the machine that inverts the entropy of objects, the protagonist has to be given an inverted oxygen tank containing inverted air for him to breathe, because it would be impossible for him to breathe air that is experiencing an opposite flow of time to him. It's also important that the turnstile's entrance and exit are in different places, because if they were in the same place, then a person entering the turnstile would collide with their inverted self exiting it, and things would get messy. So the turnstiles are the time-traveling machines through which people go to invert themselves. I'll now show you a short extract of the scene where the protagonist goes through the turnstile, inverting himself. So in this extract, we see the protagonist runs into his past self and confronts him in an odd-looking fight, where one is going through time in the opposite direction to the other one. But what if, instead of creating a closed system within the universe, where only a few objects are invented, like the turnstiles do, you inverted the entire universe's flow of time and entropy? That's where Tenet's doomsday weapon comes in. So it's explained that the same scientist who created turnstiles in the future also discovered a way to invert the entire world's flow of entropy. Afraid of what her contemporaries would do with this information, she divided the algorithm into 9 parts, inverted them, and sent them back in time. So the reaction of this scientist from the future is compared in the movie to the one of Robert Oppenheimer, who helped conceive and build the nuclear bombs during Project Manhattan. So Oppenheimer is reported to have said about the nuclear bombs, "Now I am become death, destroyer of worlds. The effect of the algorithm being activated would indeed be mass annihilation. Every particle in the world would simultaneously be reflected back in time and bump into its past self coming the other way. The release of energy would be of an unfathomable scale. Though in theory this explosion would be directed backwards in time, leaving the world after the algorithm was activated untouched. In the end, it is explained that this operation was actually a temporal pincer designed by Tenet to prevent the terrorists from retrieving the algorithm, as Neil, the protagonist's main acolyte, explained to the protagonist in the end. So on this schematic, you can see the timeline of the movie, showing that it is actually a time loop, the operation being a temporal pincer. So I'll show you now the final scene where Neil explains all of this better than me.
Hey, you never did tell me who recruited you, Neil.
Haven't you guessed by now? You did. Only not when you thought. You have a future in the past. Years ago for me, years from now for you.
You've known me for years.
For me, I think this is the end of a beautiful friendship.
But for me, it's just the beginning.
We get up to some stuff. You're gonna love it. You'll see. This whole operation's a temporal pincer.
Whose?
Yours! You're only halfway there. I'll see you at the beginning, friend.
So just as Interstellar aimed to accurately portray what it would be like for a person to travel through a black hole, Tenet imagines what it would be like for a person to travel through time in reverse. Even though the movie is difficult to understand and isn't very faithful to the science, it remains a very aesthetic and brilliantly executed movie, which I highly recommend.
Now that we've delved deep into these three movies, hopefully the themes they have in common are clear by now. Nolan takes a few liberties at the frontier between science and metaphysical concepts to create a world where time behaves strangely. And this allows Nolan to write scripts that are seemingly linear, but actually weaving, twisting, and even looping back in the case of Tenet. This always manages to create an intellectually engaging and thought-provoking experience for the viewer, but that doesn't mean everyone is a fan of Nolan. One criticism that has often been leveled at Inception and Interstellar is that they over-explain things. In this view, Nolan is so eager to construct a cohesive scientific background that he forgets to leave a little bit of mystery for the viewer to dwell on. For example, Interstellar is clearly influenced by Kubrick's 2001: A Space Odyssey, but Nolan takes a very different approach compared to Kubrick. He seems to want to justify every image that appears on screen, whereas Kubrick intentionally left the viewer to experience something mysterious and decide on their own what it means. Tenet also almost feels like a response to this criticism of over-explaining, as when you watch it for the first time, you feel utterly lost for most of the movie. Tenet is thus an illustration of how Nolan can change the atmosphere and viewer experience completely, while sticking to the signature theme of time manipulation. Inception, Interstellar, and Tenet have definitely redefined what a science fiction blockbuster should look like. After Nolan, there can be no excuse for a science fiction film which sacrifices originality and complexity in order to appeal to the mainstream. Thanks for watching. I hope our insights were interesting, and don't forget to like and subscribe, or not, because this channel was created only for this video.